I would like to welcome everyone here to the future. I took a time machine to come here to share with you what's going on in the future related to fraud. But before we speak about the future, let's speak about what happened in the last 30 years. So in the past, in the future, and even today, every transaction, every interaction, every contract, every business dealing, even every government work, based on one word. You know what's that word? Based on what we do business.
Trust.
Based on trust, exactly. And this is why there's an amazing book called About the Speed of Trust. When you are examining a transaction, where you are trying to sign a contract, do you trust the person and sign quickly? Or do you like examination, more document, more support, evidence, until you go with it? They say in business, the faster you can trust someone, the faster your life will go. But if you are slow, you don't trust people around you, you can't move ahead. So fraud is all about what? What is the definition of fraud? It's violation of trust. I give you a proposal, and you trust me, and then I violate your trust and I take your money. So all our life, as fraud examiners, internal auditors, business executives, we are trying to make a decision. Can we trust this transaction? Can we trust this client? Can we trust this evidence or not? So just annually, we are losing 250 billion. No, not because of fraud. Because of transaction we didn't trust that we should have. Imagine 250 billion loss businesses are losing because they are believing that your credit card transaction is fraudulent transaction, so they deny you. And then they break your trust. And once they break your trust, they will not get your trust anymore. You are trying to use your credit card, you can't. You are trying to use that business, you can't. They are calling you and your transaction fraud. They are not trusting you. So we need to fix the issue of trust. And as well as we need to ensure fraud will not happen. Because just last year, Deloitte reported that the amount of fraud globally was more than 2 trillion. That's a lot of fraud. So how can we measure and figure out if this is actually fraud or not? Because sometimes we make mistakes, right? We will say this is false negative or false positive. False positive when the system is identifying something as a fraud and then we discover it's not. So we need to have the proper balance in our system to be able to say how much we can accept as a transaction in our business compared to how much we should reject. Let's take a very simple example, credit card. How much last year reported global credit card fraud? Do you know the number? More than 30 billion credit card fraud happened last year. 30 billion. Do you think this is big or small? Well, credit card companies, they need to evaluate, should we reject your credit card transaction because we consider it fraudulent? Or should we allow it and we consider it as a cost of doing business? Because the amount of transactions that happen related to credit card and moving money from accounts is considered more than 1 trillion. So we are thinking, okay, 1 trillion compared to we have around 30 billion of fraud. We can consider it as cost of doing business, so we keep our customers and we make more money because we don't want to decline all these transactions. And this is a very difficult with our today age where fraud is increasing. Today the amount of fraud is going up to the roof. Look what happened, not only related to fraud, corruption is increasing. Today the schemes of fraud is different than before. Before in the old days, one employee doing fraud in an organization. Today there are a group of individuals inside your organization and a group of hackers outside. Group of customers or vendors who are working together, collusion. And the amount of fraud that's happening is not anymore in millions, it's in billions because a large group of individuals doing fraud. Look at the fraud that happened in UAE, in Middle East, all over the world. The amount of fraud, we are accounting for it based on these individuals who are doing fraud. Recently a case happened in Middle East, including banks, where the amount of fraud was 3 billion. How can someone do fraud in a bank with 3 billion? They say there are individuals working in the bank, in the business banking, there are individuals working in different companies, and the police was involved as well. They were receiving bribe. So everyone is corrupted. And we can see fraud is increasing, but we need to stop that fraud. Because today we are living in an age of speed. In the old days, when you apply for a loan, it will take what? 3 weeks to get approval. When you apply for a credit card, it will take 1 week. When you are doing an online transaction, they will need to take time to confirm. Today, transactions are happening at the speed of light. So when a transaction will happen, immediately we need to decide, is it approved or not? We can't wait. So how can we do that? How can we do the instant verification? They say it's based on the concept of confirmation, consent. The meaning compared to when I'm trying to apply for a loan, you ask me, get me a salary certificate, and get me your bank statement, and get me your electricity bill, and give me your lease contract, and all these documents that actually I can fake on Photoshop, easy, and I submit to you and you approve it. Or you have to verify all these documents. Today I will take your consent. I will say, can I get your consent to speak with your bank knowing how much money you have? Can I get your consent to get your salary from your employer? Can I get your consent to get your electricity bill from your utility provider? Done. So in less than 1 second, I can approve your transaction and I know all the information are correct. There's no fraud. We are living in a world where the exchange of information in the digital age we are living in eliminated the need for verifying documents because you are giving consent. So based on that, can we predict fraud? What do you think? Can I use my magical stick to say which one is fraud? Can I predict fraud? Now let's discuss. There's a very interesting term called forecast and prediction. What is the difference between forecast and predicting? What do you think? We always hear the weather forecast, right? So forecast is nothing. Forecast is your executive coming to the board saying, listen, next year we are forecasting around 2% of our transactions are going to be related to fraud. So the CEO says, okay, thank you. What are we benefiting from this information? Nothing. Because we don't know which transactions, we don't know who is going to do the fraud, we don't know which account is going to affect, we don't know when. Compared when we are speaking about prediction, we can predict that this customer and this customer and this employee, they are going to be affected in fraud